Can Mozambique ever defeat its Islamist insurgency? For almost a decade, the country has waged a bitter and brutal conflict to defeat armed militants affiliated with the Islamic State. The costs have been huge. Aside from thousands killed, over 1 million people have been displaced and vital energy revenues have been lost. But despite support from outside partners, including the European Union and Southern African states, the violence continues, with a dramatic spike in attacks in recent months. So, just why is the uprising so persistent? And can the government ever win? Hello and welcome, I'm James Ker-Lindsay, and here I take an informed look at international relations, conflict and security. Defeating insurgency is one of the hardest challenges any government can face. Unlike conventional wars, there are no clear front lines, let alone decisive battles that can end the conflict in a single stroke. Instead, insurgents often blend into local populations, exploiting grievances and adapting to changing circumstances. Even when territory seems to be retaken, insurgent groups can resurface at any moment. This is the problem facing Mozambique. Since 2017, the government has been fighting a major Islamist insurgency in its northern province of Cabo Delgado. But while it eventually retook key towns with international support, the militants didn't disappear. Instead, they shifted tactics, and once again, they appear to be gaining ground. As a result, after a decade of fighting that's had devastating effects, the question now is whether Mozambique can ever truly defeat its militants. The Republic of Mozambique lies in Southeast Africa. With a 2,500-kilometre coastline on the Indian Ocean, Tanzania lies to its north, Zambia, Zimbabwe and Malawi to its west, and South Africa and Eswatini to its south. The population is around 35 million. While the vast majority are Bantu-speaking Africans, the country is also home to small European, Arab, South Asian and Chinese communities. As for religion, roughly half are Christian, divided between Catholics and various Protestant groups. Another 20%, located mainly in the north, are Sunni Muslim, while the remainder either follow local religions or officially describe themselves as non-religious. Although Mozambique has a long and rich history, our story begins in the 10th century. As Muslim traders and explorers arrived, they established the first Islamic presence in the country. However, things began to change as the Portuguese arrived in the 15th century. Gradually expanding their influence over the next 300 years, they officially made Mozambique a colony in the late 19th century. But while missionaries would go on to convert large parts of the population to Christianity during the early 20th century, much of the north retained its Muslim identity. Although the end of the Second World War marked the beginning of European decolonisation across Africa and Asia, Portugal steadfastly refused to give up control of Mozambique and its other territories. Even after the emergence of an armed independence movement in the early 1960s, it clung on to the territory. However, following a left-wing military coup in April 1974, it finally decided to abandon its remaining African colonies. On the 25th of June 1975, Mozambique finally became independent. Despite hopes that the new country would be able to make a fresh start, it was plunged into a civil war just 2 years later. Against the backdrop of the Cold War, apartheid South Africa supported an uprising against the country's Soviet-backed Marxist government. After 15 years of fighting, the conflict finally ended in 1992 with a United Nations brokered peace deal that paved the way for multi-party elections. Although political tensions would resurface from time to time after that, the country finally began to develop economically. Despite its deep-rooted poverty, made worse by years of war, it had many natural resources, including gold, iron, nickel and diamonds. In addition, large reserves of natural gas were discovered off the country's northern coast, leading to major investments by international energy firms. And it's this that lies at the heart of the problems the country now faces. With a population of 2.5 million and predominantly Muslim, Cabo Delgado is the most northerly of Mozambique's 11 provinces. It's also the poorest. And all this would come together during the second decade of the new millennium, as major Islamist groups such as Islamic State were expanding their presence across East Africa, including in Somalia, Kenya and neighbouring Tanzania. An insurgent organisation emerged in Cabo Delgado, Ansar al-Sunnah, also known as Al-Shabab, or the Youth. In October 2017, the group launched its first attack on government buildings, resulting in the deaths of several police officers. After that, it carried out a series of further bombings, kidnappings and armed assaults, leading to numerous casualties. The following year, the group pledged its allegiance to the Islamic State, becoming part of the Islamic State Central Africa province, ISCAP, that also covered the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Uganda. Although the government was initially determined to tackle the uprising on its own, things continued to deteriorate. But despite offers of help from the United States, Portugal and France, it instead turned elsewhere. After hiring the Wagner Group, a Kremlin-backed mercenary organisation that later gained notoriety in Ukraine and elsewhere in Africa, it then employed a South African security firm. However, neither could stop the attacks. By 2021, the situation was becoming increasingly desperate. With over 2,500 people killed in more than 700 recorded attacks, reports suggested that as many as 800,000 people had been forced to flee the fighting. Indeed, altogether, the UN estimated that around 1.3 million people, or half the province's population, needed some form of humanitarian assistance. All the while, the economic effects were also growing. As the US energy giant Exxon was forced to halt its activities in the country, the State Department officially designated Al-Shabab, or IS Mozambique as it was also known, a terrorist organisation. In the end, though, the crucial turning point came in March 2021. Seizing control of the port town of Palma, a key energy hub, the group also attacked a major new gas plant under construction by the French energy company Total. But even though government forces retook the town within a matter of weeks, the damage had been done. Soon afterwards, Total announced that it was suspending operations in the country. By this point, the insurgency was no longer just a problem for Mozambique. It was increasingly seen as a threat to regional stability. As a result, the 16-member Southern African Development Community, SADC, called a special summit to discuss the situation. Following a request from the Mozambique government, it announced the creation of the Standby Force Mission to the Republic of Mozambique to tackle the rebellion. At the same time, others also stepped in to help. Most notably, the European Union launched a 2-year military training mission to the country, made up of 300 troops, half of which was supplied by Portugal and commanded by a Portuguese officer. It would go on to provide counter-terrorism training. Finally, and crucially, nearby Rwanda also sent over 1,000 troops to fight the insurgency. I hope you're finding this useful. If so, please do give it a like and perhaps subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thanks so much, and now back to the video. This influx of outside forces led to hopes that the uprising could finally be defeated, and initial signs were in fact very positive. The SADC mission helped retake territory from insurgents, contributing to the recapture of key towns. Likewise, Rwanda became central to counterinsurgency efforts. Eventually supplying over 4,000 troops, it also helped Mozambican forces secure towns and strategic sites, including gas installations. Meanwhile, the EU mission was also extended to provide ever greater advisory support. All this appeared to be working. Over several years, the insurgents lost ground in cities and towns and instead focused their efforts on rural districts. However, it wouldn't last. After struggling with funding and internal problems, the SADC mission ended in 2024. This was followed by the Trump administration's decision to cut overseas assistance, ending crucial programs that were helping the situation in the north. Coupled with broader international aid cuts, All this gave the insurgents a chance to regroup, and in late 2025 there was a dramatic spike in violence as attacks increased across Cabo Delgado and even pushed into neighbouring provinces. The effects have been disastrous. As well as more than 6,000 deaths, latest estimates suggest that over 1 million people have been displaced since the start of the violence almost a decade ago. So, can the insurgency be defeated? Ultimately, it depends on how the term defeat is defined. Militarily, progress can certainly be made. With support from Rwandan troops and training from the EU mission, as well as earlier backing from the SADC mission, government forces retook major towns, secured key transport routes and protected strategic gas installations. Nevertheless, the recent wave of attacks has shown just how fragile all this can be. For as long as the underlying grievances that fueled the uprising remain unresolved, the insurgents can regain ground when conditions shift in their favour. Meanwhile, they continue to recruit. Poverty, youth unemployment, perceived marginalisation and disputes over resource revenues all need to be tackled. In this sense, long-term success hinges on far more than security operations, as important as they may be. It depends on improving governance, restoring public trust and ensuring that gas revenues deliver tangible economic benefits to local communities. Ultimately, Mozambique's struggle underscores a common lesson in such cases. Without political and economic reforms, the military may be able to contain the militants. However, they're unlikely to eliminate them. The government and its international partners succeeded in containing and repelling the militants, but as seen by the latest attacks, lasting stability will depend on their ability to translate this into real benefits. If the communities in Cabo Delgado see the positive results of peace, the insurgency may slowly fade away. If not, though, the cycle of deadly violence in northern Mozambique could yet persist for many more years to come. I hope you found that useful. If so, here are some more videos that you might find interesting. Thanks so much for watching, and see you in the next video.